The station called Harmony Point floated in the dark space between stars. It was old, built by species that died long before humans learned to make fire. Now it served as neutral ground where enemies could talk without fighting. Today, it would host the most important meeting in human history. Admiral Park Tae-ho stood at the window of the human delegation's quarters and watched ships arrive. Villani cruisers came first, their hulls made of living crystal that caught the starlight and threw it back in rainbow colors. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. Behind them came vessels from a dozen other species, all members of the Galactic Council, all here to watch what would happen between humanity and the Villani Dominion. They sent 12 warships, said Kim Yuna, standing beside him. She was the diplomatic attaché, trained in alien languages and customs. Her job was to find the words that would prevent war. That's more than protocol allows. They want us to feel small, Tae-ho replied. He turned from the window and straightened his uniform. It was simple navy blue with gold trim, nothing like the elaborate robes the Villani wore. Let them play their games. We're here to make peace. The conflict had started 3 years ago over border systems. Humanity expanded fast after discovering faster-than-light travel. They found worlds and made them home. But some of those worlds sat in space the Villani claimed as theirs, even though they never used it. The Villani were old, one of the founding species of the Galactic Council. They had ruled this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. To them, humans were children who grew too fast and needed to be controlled. There had been small fights, ships destroyed, colonies raided, people killed on both sides. Now the Council demanded peace talks before the situation became a full war. Tae-ho and Yuna walked through the station's corridors toward the main chamber. Other species moved aside when they passed. Some looked at them with curiosity. Others showed fear or disgust. Humans were new to the galaxy, and not everyone was happy they were here. The main chamber was a vast dome, with a ceiling that showed the stars outside. Seats rose in circles around a central platform where the talks would happen. Representatives from 30 species filled the room, their translators humming softly as they whispered to each other. The Villani delegation was already there. High Arbiter Kristallos sat in the center, his body a tower of blue and purple crystal that chimed when he moved. Around him stood his advisors, all glittering and cold. They did not stand when the humans entered. Tae-ho took his seat across from them. Yuna sat beside him, her translation device ready. Other members of the human team filled the remaining chairs, including military advisors and legal experts. "We are here to find peace," Tae-ho began simply. "The Terran Federation wants to end this conflict. We believe there is room in the galaxy for both our peoples." Kristallos made a sound like breaking glass. It was Villani laughter. "Room in the galaxy," he repeated. "You have been in space for less than 100 of your years. We have been here for ages beyond your counting. You speak of room as if you have any right to it." Yuna leaned close to Tae-ho. "He's establishing dominance. This is normal for opening talks. Stay calm." Tae-ho nodded slightly. "We don't claim to be ancient or powerful like the Villani. We only want to live in peace. Tell us your terms." The terms came, and each one was worse than the last. First, humans must leave 3 colony systems immediately. 200,000 people would lose their homes. Second, the Terran Federation must reduce its military fleet by half and submit the remaining ships to Villani inspection. Third, human scientific research would be monitored by Villani observers to ensure humans did not develop dangerous technology. Tae-ho listened to each demand with a calm face, though inside his chest, his heart beat hard. Beside him, Yuna's hands trembled slightly as she translated. "These terms are difficult," Tae-ho said carefully, "but we will consider them. Perhaps we can find middle ground. What if we withdraw from 1 system instead of 3? What if we allow observers but keep control of our own research?" Kristallos dismissed each offer. The Villani wanted submission, not compromise. As the hours passed, it became clear that they had not come to negotiate, they had come to dictate. Other council species watched in silence. Some seemed uncomfortable, but none spoke against the Villani. The crystalline beings were too powerful, too old, too important. Better to let the humans suffer than to challenge the established order. Then came the final demand. Human children born on the contested worlds will be taken as cultural wards. They will be raised on Villani worlds and taught proper respect for the elder species. This will ensure future generations do not repeat your mistakes. The chamber went silent. Yuna stopped translating. Her face had gone white. Tejo sat very still. He thought about the colonies, about the families there. He thought about children being taken from their parents and raised by aliens who saw humans as lesser beings. He thought about what that would mean for humanity's future. Slowly he stood. The movement drew every eye in the chamber. Even Kristallos paused, his crystal body catching the light. "Admiral Park, please, we can still—" "No," Tejo said quietly. "We cannot." He looked at Kristallos, and something in his eyes made the ancient being lean back slightly. "The Terran Federation came here to make peace." His voice was calm and clear, carrying to every corner of the dome. "We offered compromise after compromise. We showed respect for your age and your power. We did everything we could to find a path forward together." He paused. "You answered with insults. You answered with demands designed to cripple us. And now you ask for our children." Tejo straightened his shoulders. "Then we are done here." He turned and walked toward the exit. Yuna and the rest of the human delegation followed, leaving their seats empty. Behind them, Kristallos called out, "You cannot simply leave. The council has not dismissed these talks." Tejo stopped at the door and looked back. "The Villani have made their position clear. So have we. What comes next is no longer a matter for diplomats." He left. The chamber erupted in noise. Species shouted at each other. Kristallos demanded order, but the humans were gone, and with them went any hope of peace. In the corridor, Yuna grabbed Tejo's arm. "What have we done? They'll see this as an act of war." "No," Tejo replied. "They see humans as weak, as prey. They think we'll come crawling back and accept whatever scraps they offer." He shook his head. "They're wrong." "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we show them what we really are." The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Every station, every world, every ship with a communication array heard the same story. Peace talks had collapsed. The humans had walked out. War was coming. On the Villani homeworld, crowds gathered in crystal plazas to celebrate. They sang ancient victory songs and praised High Arbiter Kristallos for standing firm against the young upstarts. The humans had shown their true nature, they said, cowards who ran when faced with real power. Soon the Villani fleet would teach them proper respect. Military commanders began mobilizing. 300 capital ships, the pride of the Villani Dominion, prepared for departure. They would strike the human colony of New Busan first, a world of 40 million people on the edge of contested space. It would be a quick conquest. The humans had nothing that could stop them. But on other worlds, in quiet rooms far from cheering crowds, older beings watched the news with worried eyes. These were the scholars and historians who had studied humanity since first contact. They did not celebrate. "The humans do not run," said one, a being of gas and light who had lived for 3,000 years. "In all their history, in all their wars, they have never simply surrendered. Something else is happening." On Earth, it was morning in Seoul when President Lee Ji-won walked onto the stage of the United Nations General Assembly. The chamber was full. Every nation had sent representatives. The whole world was watching. Ji-won was not a soldier. She had been a teacher before entering politics, then a diplomat who spent 20 years building bridges between countries. She believed in talking, in understanding, in finding common ground. She had hoped, truly hoped, that the talks on Harmony Point would succeed. Now,
She had to prepare her people for war. "Citizens of Earth," she began. Her voice was soft but steady. "By now you have heard what happened. Our representatives offered peace. The Valani demanded submission. They demanded our colonies. They demanded our children. Admiral Park made the only choice he could. He said, no." She paused, looking out at the faces before her. "I want to tell you about humanity, about who we are and where we came from. It's important that we remember, especially now." She told them about history, about the wars humans had fought against each other for thousands of years, about the bombs that could destroy cities, about the camps where millions were killed for being different, about the weapons that could poison the land for generations. "We did these things to ourselves," Ji-won said. "We created horrors that still haunt us. We learned exactly how cruel and destructive we could be." Her voice grew heavier. "When we reached for the stars, we made a promise. We would leave that violence behind. We would meet new species as friends, not conquerors. We would be peaceful, even if others saw it as weakness, because we knew, better than anyone, where the other path led." She took a breath. "But we did not forget. We could not forget. And we prepared, quietly, for the day when peace would fail us." President Lee announced the activation of the Prometheus Protocol. She did not explain what it meant. She did not need to. Every human who had served in the military knew. Around the world, things began to happen. In orbital shipyards, vessels that had been listed as cargo transports or research ships began changing. Panels slid away to reveal weapons that should not exist. Engines that seemed ordinary suddenly produced 10 times their rated power. Ships that looked weak became ships that could kill. Across the colonies, evacuation orders went out. 40 million people on New Busan began boarding transport ships. They moved quickly and quietly, taking only what they needed. They had practiced this before. They knew the plan. In deep space, humanity's hidden fleet came awake. Lieutenant Choi Min-ho stood on the bridge of the stealth carrier Silent Thunder and read his orders for the third time. The ship around him was dark, running on minimal power to avoid detection. 200 crew members waited at their stations, speaking in whispers. His navigation officer, Shin Hana, approached him. She was young, only 24, but she was one of the best pilots in the fleet. Her hands were steady on the console, but her eyes showed fear. "Sir," she said quietly, "are these orders real?" Min-ho nodded. "We're actually going to do this. We're actually going to fight the Valani." "They made their choice," Min-ho replied. "They think we're weak. They think we'll break. They're coming to take our people, Hana, our families, our children." He looked at her. "What would you do?" Hana was silent for a moment. Then she straightened. "I'd fight. So will we." The Silent Thunder was not alone. In asteroid fields and behind moons, in the dark spaces where sensors could not reach, thousands of human warships waited. They had been built in secret over decades, hidden from the galaxy, hoping they would never be needed. Now they powered up their weapons. Back on Earth, President Lee finished her address. "To the Valani and to the galaxy, I say this. We did not want this war. We tried everything to prevent it. But we will not let you take our people. We will not let you treat us as slaves. And we will not let you hurt our children." She looked directly into the camera. "You have seen only what we chose to show you. You have seen a young species trying to be peaceful. Now you will see what we really are." She paused. "We remember what we're capable of. We think it's time you learned." The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humanity as harmless began to feel something they had not felt in a long time. The older ones recognized it. They had felt it before, long ago when they faced predators in their own evolution. It was fear. On the Volani homeworld, High Arbiter Kristallos watched the human presidential speech with growing unease. There was something in her voice, something in her eyes. This was not the speech of a leader preparing to surrender. This was not even the speech of a leader preparing to fight. This was the speech of someone who already knew how it would end. "Find out what the Prometheus Protocol is," he ordered his intelligence officers. "Find out what they're hiding." But it was too late for that. The human fleet was already moving into position. In 36 hours, the Volani would arrive at New Busan expecting an easy victory. They would find something very different. On the Silent Thunder, Lieutenant Choi Min-ho addressed his crew. "We trained for this. We hoped it would never happen, but we trained anyway. Because humans always remember that peace is fragile, that it must be protected, that sometimes the only way to protect it is to show what happens when it breaks." He looked at their faces, saw the fear and the determination mixed together. The Volani think they know what humans are. They're wrong. Tomorrow, we correct them. The crew returned to their stations. The ship hummed with quiet power, waiting in the darkness. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had always offered peace first.
The Volani fleet arrived at New Busan with the confidence of predators approaching wounded prey. 300 capital ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and formed a perfect wall of crystal and light. Their weapons were charged, their soldiers were ready. High Commander Prism, the greatest military leader in Volani history, stood on his flagship and looked at the world below. It was empty. The cities were dark. The orbital platforms were abandoned. The defense satellites floated silent and dead. 40 million humans had lived here 3 days ago. Now there was nothing but empty buildings and quiet streets. "They ran," Prism said. His voice chimed with amusement. "The mighty humans ran like frightened animals." His officers laughed, their crystal bodies ringing together in harmony. "Scan for their fleet," Prism ordered. "They must have left some ships to protect their retreat. We'll destroy them and then take the planet." The scans found nothing. No ships, no weapons, no resistance at all. "Perhaps they left traps," one officer suggested, "mines or automated defenses." "Then we'll find them and destroy them too. Move the fleet into orbit. Begin landing preparations." The 300 ships began to move forward, spreading out to surround the planet. They moved slowly, carefully, watching for any sign of danger. They never saw it coming. Admiral Park Tae-ho sat in the command chair of the dreadnought Imjin and watched the Volani fleet on his tactical display. They were right where he wanted them, spread out and focused on the planet, their backs to the asteroid field. "All ships report ready," his communications officer said. Tae-ho nodded. "Electronic warfare status." Bae-un-ji looked up from her console. She was small and quiet, the kind of person you wouldn't notice in a crowd, but she commanded systems that could blind entire fleets. "Ready to deploy. On your order, they won't be able to call for help or talk to each other." "Weapons?" "All batteries charged, targets assigned." Tae-ho took a breath. He thought about the peace talks, about the demands the Volani had made. He thought about the children they wanted to take. He thought about what he was about to do. Then he gave the order. "Begin." 2,000 human warships attacked at once. They came from everywhere, from inside the asteroid field where they had hidden among the rocks with their power shut down, from beneath the ice of the system's moons where they had waited in frozen silence, from behind the planet itself, using its mass to hide their approach. Bae-un-ji's electronic attack hit first.
Every Villani communication channel filled with noise. Their sensors showed false images, ghost ships that weren't there, threats that didn't exist. In an instant, the great fleet became 300 blind and deaf ships, unable to talk to each other. Then, the weapons fired. The humans had kept their best technology secret for decades. They had shown the galaxy old missiles and simple lasers, weapons that were good but not special. They had let everyone believe they were not a threat. Now they showed the truth. Gravity lances reached out and crushed Villani's ships like toys. The weapons bent space itself, creating forces that no shield could stop. Crystal hulls that had survived centuries of battle shattered in seconds. Quantum torpedoes appeared inside enemy ships without warning. They skipped through normal space, past armor and shields, and exploded in engineering rooms and ammunition stores. Ships died from within, torn apart by their own weapons cooking off. Nano-swarm missiles released clouds of tiny machines that ate through crystal hulls like acid. The Villani watched in horror as their ships dissolved around them, atmosphere rushing out through a million tiny holes. High Commander Prism screamed orders that no one could hear. He tried to rally his fleet, to form defensive positions, to fight back. But his ships couldn't coordinate. They couldn't even see what was attacking them. They fired blind, sometimes hitting their own allies. The humans did not fight like the Villani expected. There was no honor, no formal challenges, no chances to surrender. There was only death, delivered with terrible efficiency. Human ships worked in perfect teams, each one knowing exactly where to be and what to do. They had practiced this for years, preparing for a battle they hoped would never come. Lieutenant Minho drove the silent thunder through the chaos, his ship dancing between enemy fire. Hana's hands flew across her controls, finding paths through the destruction that shouldn't exist. They hit a Villani cruiser with everything they had, saw it break apart, and moved to the next target without pausing. 13 down, moving to next assault vector. Minho nodded. His face was calm, but inside he felt sick. These were living beings dying around him. Even if they were the enemy, even if they had threatened his people, they were still lives ending in fire and vacuum. But he did not stop. He could not stop. The Villani had made their choice, and this was the consequence. Admiral Tejo watched the battle from the Imjin, coordinating thousands of ships with quiet commands. He felt no joy in the victory taking shape before him. He felt only a heavy sadness, the weight of doing what had to be done. 11 minutes after it began, the battle ended. 273 Villani ships were destroyed or disabled. Wreckage filled the space around New Bushan, glittering crystal mixed with frozen atmosphere and bodies. The remaining 27 ships fled, their engines straining as they ran for safety. Human losses, 16 ships. The silence that followed was total. On the Imjin, no one spoke, no one cheered. They had won, but it did not feel like victory. Tejo stood. "Open a channel to the retreating ships, all frequencies." His communications officer looked at him in surprise, but obeyed. "Villani vessels," Tejo said. His voice was tired. "This battle is over. We will not pursue you. Go home. Tell your leaders what happened here." He paused. "Then tell them we're still willing to talk." The channel closed. The fleeing Villani ships said nothing, just kept running. Across the galaxy, species with access to long-range sensors watched the recordings in shock. They had to play them several times to believe what they were seeing. The Villani fleet, 300 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy, destroyed in 11 minutes by a species that had been in space for less than a century. How was this possible? Where did the humans get these weapons? Where did they get so many ships? How had they hidden them? And if they were this powerful, why had they pretended to be weak? On the Imjin, Baeunji approached Admiral Taeho. "Sir, the Council is demanding an explanation. Every species in the galaxy is asking questions." "Let them ask." "What do we tell them?" Taeho looked at the tactical display, at the field of wreckage that used to be an enemy fleet. "Tell them the truth. We could have built an empire. We could have conquered them all. We chose not to." He shook his head. "We chose peace, and they threw it away. This is what happens when peace fails." Baeunji nodded and returned to her station. Taeho sat back down in his command chair and closed his eyes. The battle was over, but the war was not finished. The Villani still had ships, they still had pride, they would want revenge. But he hoped, desperately hoped, that they had also learned something today. Humanity was not prey. Humanity had never been prey. And if the galaxy was smart, it would never make them prove it again.
Fear moved through the Galactic Council like a disease. In the great halls where diplomats had gathered for centuries, representatives whispered to each other in frightened voices. They had all seen the recordings from New Busan. They had watched the Villani fleet, the most powerful military force in the known galaxy, destroyed in less time than it takes to eat a meal. Now they looked at the human ambassador with new eyes. She was a small woman named Kwan Mirai. She had served on the council for 5 years, always polite, always respectful, always willing to compromise. The other species had liked her because she seemed harmless. Now they realized she had been harmless because she chose to be. "The Terran Federation requests calm," Mirai said in the emergency session. "We have no plans to attack anyone else. We acted only to defend our people." "You destroyed 300 ships!" shouted the representative from the Keth Collective. "You killed thousands!" "They came to take our world. They came to take our children. What would you have done?" No one answered. Species that had been friendly with the Villani suddenly wanted nothing to do with them. Messages of support that had been sent before the battle were quickly deleted. Ambassadors who had spoken against humanity now claimed they had always wanted peace. Everyone was afraid that humans would come for them next. On the Villani homeworld, High Arbiter Kristallos faced a crisis unlike anything in his long life. He stood in the Chamber of Ages, surrounded by the crystallized remains of Villani leaders going back 10,000 years. Their wisdom was supposed to guide him, but none of them had ever faced something like this. "How?" he demanded of his military commanders. "How did we lose? Our technology is older than their entire civilization. Our ships were built with knowledge they cannot understand. How did they beat us?" The commanders had no answer. They only had reports, and the reports made no sense. Human weapons that should not exist, human ships that appeared from nowhere, human tactics that were brutally perfect. Everything the Villani knew about humanity was wrong. "We underestimated them," one commander finally said. "We thought they were young and weak. We were mistaken." "Mistaken?" Kristallos raged. "We lost 2/3 of our fleet in 11 minutes. We're the laughingstock of the galaxy. Every species that feared us now sees us as failures." He paced the chamber, his crystal body throwing angry light across the walls. "And the humans offered to talk? After everything they did, they offered to talk? They're mocking us." But a quiet voice spoke from the back of the room. "Perhaps they're not." Kristallos turned. An old Villani stood there, her crystal dimmed with age. She was Historian Prime, keeper of records going back to the beginning of their species. "Explain," he demanded. "I have been studying human history since they first appeared. Their wars, their atrocities, their weapons. Do you know what they did to themselves before they reached space? They fought. All primitive species